All right, good morning, everybody. We are recording. Welcome to today's webinar. Please remember to stay muted. This webinar is being recorded. If you have any questions, please feel free to send them in the chat at any time. We will have a Q&A session at the end of today's session. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. My name is Danielle Bass. I am here with the Better Business Bureau serving Eastern Mass, Maine, Vermont, and Rhode Island. We are hosting this webinar today. I especially want to thank our guests. Today we have with us Franklin Peralta, Director of Business Engagement at English for New Bostonians. Franklin has been with English for New Bostonians for more than 12 years, where he leads the English Works Business Service Initiative. He and his team have helped dozens of companies and hundreds of workers to improve their English language skills for the workplace settings. Our next guest is Robert Duncan. Rob is the director of the Massachusetts Workforce Training Fund. Since joining Commonwealth Corporation in 2010, Robert has guided the Workforce Training Fund through an unprecedented period of growth and transformation. His background includes over 20 years of experience in workforce and economic development in nonprofit, government, and private sector organization. Robert remains dedicated to optimizing the intersection of business, government, and workforce. He holds an MBA from the University of Hartford and a BS of Public Policy from Western Michigan University. With that, I want to open the floor to Franklin to talk a little bit more about what he does.
Thank you so much, Danielle. It is my pleasure to be here with new friends and some familiar faces. I feel this is the perfect scenario for us to talk about upskilling the workforce, the Better Business Bureau. I mean, it can be better than that. We are already working with at least one of the members of the BBB, the Boloco restaurants, and we are on the initial stages of working with two other of your members. So thank you so much for having us. As Danielle was saying, I've been working with English for Bostonians and helping companies to secure funding to train their workers for many years now. And as we look at the demographic trends, we will need to continue training immigrant workers as they are coming from countries where English is not the first language. You may be feeling already the effects of the worker shortage that we've been going through for several years now, but we have a solution for you, and it's upskilling your current workforce and new hires with customized English language training. Employees will be more productive if they can communicate better both orally and in written communications like emails, reports, etc. And by being more productive, that's also going to save you time. We just graduated a class where one of the directors of the organization counts in so many hours that now she has available because she doesn't have to be editing reports. Like she gets like a dozen reports from different workstations, and now she doesn't have to do that because these people went through an English for professional writing, and these reports are now a pleasure to read instead of a headache. Also, an English language training is a perfect conduit for increasing your employees' digital skills. Since we have the capacity to offer this training online, we can do it in person, we can do it online. When we do it in person, the Workforce Training Fund program will also pay for the equipment to make sure that people have an opportunity to practice their English, not just with the teacher, but also online and become familiar with the technology. So there are many, many advantages. I'm not going to go into the Workforce Training Fund program. Rob will take care of that piece. But I can tell you how it works to set up these English classes for your employees. And again, don't think just about the people that don't speak any English. We can work with people that need basic English or intermediate or advanced, people that are fluent orally and they just need to improve their reading and writing skills. So the first thing we will do is we will work with you on an English workplace needs assessment to determine important data to put together a successful training program. We will go ahead and assess everybody that wants to participate in the training, because it's key to know what is their current level of English and what kind of interactions do they have with regularly with coworkers and clients and consultants, what kind of English interactions they have. Also, we will need to know what level of English do they need to reach in order to be considered for promotions, which is key for the motivation for the employees to participate in this training. All this data is then used for filling out the Workforce Training Fund program application, and then the training can start. And you'll notice a change in your immigrant workers towards the communication in the first couple of weeks of the training, as they gain the confidence to make mistakes, which is the step number one if you want to improve your language skills. When you are not afraid of, oh, I'm just gonna say it, please help me, correct me, but I'm gonna try out to communicate with you. So I would say a successful English training has to do mostly with the employees being able to see how this training is going to help me to do my job better, and how this training is going to help me to integrate better in the company. It's not a magic bullet. It's not going to change your company. It's going to improve your company. So if you see how some of the workers are not integrating with the co-workers, it may be because they don't have the language skills. But by you bringing this training, you will be able to erase that barrier and become more a team in that sense. I want to cut it short because I really want to hear from the audience their questions, but I'm going to tell you two things that you should avoid regarding these English trainings. And the first one is, don't throw everyone in just one class. You know, sometimes we've seen a company saying, oh, I have one English class, everybody's coming to it. That is a recipe for a disaster. You really want to, unless you have done the workplace needs assessment and it's been determined that, yes, all these people are in the same level of English to begin with, in that case, sure, they all belong to the same group. But it's very important to avoid putting people in the same class when their level of English are very different from each other, because some people will get discouraged because they cannot follow what's going on in the class. And some people, the other people will get discouraged because they feel it's a waste of their time because the level is too low. So that's a mistake I've seen, unfortunately, more than once being made, of putting everybody in one single group. Do your due diligence. Make sure that you are determined before you start the training what level your people need. And the other thing to avoid is, don't waste your time with and your money with a 10 to 20 hours training. I don't know if you have learned a language after being an adult, but it takes more than 10 hours to learn a language. Actually, what we've seen, both from data and from our classes, it takes between 120 to 100 hours of training for a person to move from one level to the next. We will adapt to whatever you can afford in terms of the training, but we wouldn't go below 80 hours because it becomes a waste of time. Unless, once again, unless you've done your workplace needs assessment and you determine that the people that need the English training are already fluent orally and they just need, you know, some help with their writing. In that case, I can see how 20, 30 hours English course can help a lot of these people. But that has to be determined. It's not just like, oh, I'm just going to do 10 hours and I'm going to change the life of my employees. Take more than that. So yeah, going back to the positive side is you will see the change of aptitude, on how people will become more open. They will say hi back to you when you say hi to them, when they gain that confidence of, this company is investing in me, in my skills. I'm gonna try my best. This is gonna help me, it's gonna help the company, and I'm gonna take advantage of this opportunity. So thank you so much, Danielle.
Thank you. It's such an excellent resource, something I didn't even know about. And I think that's something that I see a lot day to day when I'm talking to people, is they don't even realize the resources out there for them. So thank you for taking the time today to talk a little bit about what it is that you offer and how it can be such an incredible resource and an additional asset to businesses and to their employees. So Rob, I'll open the floor to you and let me share my screen so that you can talk a little bit more about how you work with Franklin and, collaborate.
Great. Well, thank you. For starters, I want to thank you, Danielle, and the Better Business Bureau for pulling us together today. I really appreciate the focus on workforce training, and specifically how ESOL can be achieved through the Workforce Training Fund. And thanks, as always, Franklin, for helping to promote these opportunities, and everybody who's taken some time to join us today. I'm again Rob Duncan, Director of the Workforce Training Fund with Commonwealth Corporation. We're a quasi-public state agency. If you could go to the next slide and then skip right through the next one to slide 3. Commonwealth Corporation fosters workforce equity in Massachusetts by delivering innovative and collaborative professional development solutions that help diverse communities and employers succeed. We do that in a few different areas. Some of our programs are investing in the young people in the future workforce. Others are focused on pipeline training programs, training for people who are unemployed or underemployed, gaining skills that are in demand, and training and upskilling the current workforce. And that's the umbrella I fall under in the Workforce Training Fund program, which gives grants to employers in Massachusetts for training projects that train their incumbent workers, their current employees, or those that are hired in during the life of a grant. Next slide. As I mentioned, the Workforce Training Fund is a small part of a large portfolio of grants of Commonwealth Corporation. I encourage you to visit comcorp.org to learn more about grant programs, current and past, in any of these program streams. And again, today we'll be focusing on the Workforce Training Fund and 2 grants that are available. I really think about the Workforce Training Fund as a kind of not just a win-win, but a win-win-win, if you will. This is a combined opportunity, right? So the employees, they gain new skills and the opportunity that comes from that. The employers are benefiting from a more highly skilled workforce and the new capabilities that brings their organization. And of course, it's a win for the state that is increasing the ability to do business in Massachusetts with our top-notch workforce. Next slide. As we get further into the Workforce Training Fund, I encourage questions at any time in whatever format is necessary. We'll, of course, stop in the end, but I'm comfortable if people want to raise a hand and address something in the moment as well. So last year, the Workforce Training Fund had a kind of a bumper crop. It was our biggest year in history. We approved over $30 million to over 1,300 different businesses to train over 23,000 workers. A pretty significant uptick after a couple slow years with the pandemic. The funds that are awarded by the Workforce Training Fund program are collected via a surcharge on unemployment insurance, payroll taxes, if you will. And each year it gathers about $20 to $23 million at a rate of, basically, if you have an employee in Massachusetts and you're contributing to the Workforce Training Fund, you're paying up to $8.40 per year per employee. And this is your opportunity to go from a sponsor organization, if you will, to a benefactor. Let's talk about the impact a little bit. Next slide. I say you can go from a sponsor to benefactor in that there are tens of thousands of businesses contributing to the Workforce Training Fund, but only a few thousand taking advantage of the opportunity. So this is an opportunity for you to receive grants that significantly outpace any contribution your organization has made. And companies that have Workforce Training Fund grants are consistently over time growing faster than employment at large. So when we compare the light blue lines here, this is employment growth in Massachusetts for those companies with Workforce Training Fund grants, compared to the darker blue and the purple lines, which are the state and federal average during the same time period. So you see a significant difference here. These are firms that are coming in to proactively invest in the future of their workforce, and so this is a great position for companies that are seeking to grow, and of course, in the market right now, it can be quite difficult to fill positions. So this is a great opportunity to expand that opportunity, maybe hire some that wouldn't otherwise be job ready and invest in training, or invest in opportunities to promote your workers and retain them. Next slide, please. So who's eligible to receive grants from the Workforce Training Fund program? First of all, you have to have W-2 payroll employees in Massachusetts, as opposed to contractors. Employees must be paid the regular wages during training grants. In other words, training is on company time. And companies must be compliant with all state requirements. You're current with your unemployment insurance payments, no outstanding issues with Department of Industrial Accidents or the Attorney General or anything else. And there's a fourth item that we need to add to this slide, which is you have to be contributing to the Workforce Training Fund. Well, what does that mean? Well, first of all, government cannot contribute, so government cannot get grants from the Workforce Training Fund. Only for-profit or some nonprofits. So first of all for-profit companies with payroll employees in Massachusetts are required by law to contribute. So as long as you're current, you're eligible. Nonprofits, there's an option. So some nonprofits can opt out of contributing if they're self-insured, and others contribute. Now, most of the nonprofits that are self-insured are the pretty massive ones, the hospital networks, the universities, the really big ones. Most of the small nonprofit organizations, small and medium size, are contributing. Talk to whoever handles your payroll taxes and reporting, and they can help clarify. But if you're contributing to unemployment insurance on a quarterly basis, regardless of claims, then you're participating. If you only pay claims if you only pay into unemployment when new claims happen, then you're probably self-insured. And anybody that's not sure can reach out, and we can help clarify. And if necessary, can look you up in the Department of Unemployment Assistance database. But again, all for-profits should be contributing if they're current, and most smaller nonprofits will be contributing, and most larger will not. Next slide. So there are a couple different grant programs available through the Workforce Training Fund for incumbent worker training. The first option, which is the primary option for most people, is the Express program. This is a streamlined program for smaller scale training needs. Applicants submit an application showing, providing information about their organization to determine eligibility. And then they simply choose the courses that they like from a database, a directory of pre-registered courses. Companies can receive up to $30,000 per year in express grants, and the limit is up to $3,000 per person per course. And the way it works is the Express program will reimburse an employer fully for those costs up to $30,000 a year, up to $3,000 per person, if that company has 100 or fewer employees. Larger companies can get up to half of the total costs reimbursed. So again, small businesses, those with 100 or fewer employees, can submit for reimbursement of total costs up to $3,000 per person and up to $30,000 a year. And businesses with 100 employees or more in Massachusetts, they can get up to half of the total costs, $30,000 per year limit, $3,000 per person limit covered. This is a quick and easy process. There's basically like a 3-week turnaround time that we expect for express grant applications. So this is ideal for those small scale training needs. You have a specific need right now you want to address. Maybe you don't have a bigger plan in mind at the moment, or maybe you're new to the Workforce Training Fund, or maybe you're new to working with a training provider and you're kind of testing the waters and getting to know. Express is a great opportunity to get started, and most of the money that's awarded through the Workforce Training Fund this year and in the future will be through the Express program. The other option, next slide, is the general program. So these are bigger grants. The general program grants are really focused on larger scale training needs and customized training projects. And these are grants of up to $250,000 and up to 2 years. The idea is you'll source qualified trainers and you'll work with them to propose a detailed and customized training plan. General program grants are required to meet a dollar-for-dollar matching requirement. And the way that works is inclusive of in-kind contribution. So as we mentioned earlier, all the training under the Workforce Training Fund has to take place on company time. And the cost of your employees' time during those training hours can be attributed to the matching requirement. So most of the training that takes place under the general program, it's group training. So a group of employees will typically outpace the cost of the training provider in a given hour. So usually the cost of employees' time can completely account for the dollar-for-dollar matching requirement. Again, the general program grants require a dollar-for-dollar matching requirement, and the cost of the employee's time will be considered and credited for that match, and that usually covers all the requirement. The application process is rolling throughout the year. Companies can apply at any time, and the general program application is more lengthy, and it requires the company's appeal to selection criteria in a competitive process. Some of the criteria that can be appealed to are things like whether it will result in jobs being retained or jobs being added or increased wages or promotion opportunities for the workers being trained. Always looking for an impact on the company's competitiveness or productivity, understanding what the business impact of the training is going to be. Always looking for projects that are going to invest in upskilling lower skill or lower wage workers. Always requiring projects that supplement but don't replace private investment in training. And we'll talk more about that. But the idea is we're looking to not cover the cost of your ongoing training that you do on a routine basis or that you are already planning to do, but we're looking to add some next level capability that would not take place without a grant, to take take your foundation and build upon that. We're also limited in that we cannot fund mandated training. The most common example there is OSHA 10 training. So if it's mandated for somebody to do their job in for instance, OSHA 10, for somebody to enter a construction site, then we can't cover it. That's your cost of doing business, and you shouldn't be waiting for grant funding to do that training, for instance. We're also looking for, cost reasonableness. There'll be a detailed training plan and budget submitted in the process. And we usually take about 90 days from the time that an application is submitted to the time that training can get underway if an application is approved. We have a process that we think is pretty transparent as you go through it. And we have a very high approval rate, probably, 89% approval rate, something 85, 89. And those that are not approved can reapply at any time. So you'll get detailed feedback about the issues at hand and an opportunity to reapply the very next day if you're able to make whatever changes seem necessary. So this is an ongoing opportunity throughout the year. And again, there's more than one bite at the apple. So that's a lot. We'll go to the next slide. And I'll say that this is a great go-to, and you'll see this primarily featured on the Workforce Training Fund website. It's a little bit of a kind of decision tree diagram. But in recapping the two opportunities, first, what we just discussed, the general program. These are the $250,000 or less 2-year customized training grants. The large scale needs, these should supplement but not replace private investment in training. We're awarding grants each month on a rolling basis, and this does require a dollar-for-dollar matching requirement. Express is limited to $30,000 per company per year, with a much more streamlined and abridged process where companies are choosing from a directory of available courses. Now, let's pause on that concept for a moment. We have a directory with hundreds of courses, maybe thousands at this point, that are available. And a company can apply, go into the directory, find what they like, submit their application, send their people off, and get their reimbursement. But if they're not finding the training that they're looking for, they can source that training from the larger world as you would in a general program application. In the general program, you source your training providers from wherever you see fit, and you share their qualifications with us. Express, they're already in the database. But if you have a trainer identified in a course that you want to take and they're not in the directory, they can simply, in a very simple process, submit their information and get the course approved within a couple weeks. I think it's maybe even 10 days is the turnaround time that we expect to be able to honor. And then you can submit the application for the business to get the grant. So that's often a great opportunity for different trainers to learn about the program and populate their offerings in the directory. So even though it's a limited number of courses and providers, it's an open opportunity from another perspective. So let's see, next slide, let's spend a little moment on ESOL. So Workplace ESOL is a priority of the Workforce Training Fund program. And this is where there's one exception in the general program to that dollar-for-dollar matching requirement. We do not require a dollar-for-dollar matching requirement for ESOL training. Now, a general program application could have one topic. It could be all ESOL focus, or there could be several topics. And for training that is not ESOL, there's always the one-to-one matching requirement. But for any ESOL courses included in a general program grant, the one-to-one isn't required. And we found that some employers, especially the smaller ones, were having trouble meeting the one-to-one requirement for ESOL, given the lower costs than some other, lower wages than some other participants, and smaller group sizes. It can be difficult to keep up, but because it's a priority, we want those low-wage workers to have the opportunity, and the businesses that are willing to invest in them to have the opportunity. So we waived the one-to-one requirement for ESOL so that training, even in small ratios, 3-to-1, 4-to-1, could still go on if there's attrition or scheduling difficulties. So we're hoping that this is just one step to eliminate some of those barriers to workplace ESOL training. Next slide, please. Well, I think I meant to change the order of these last two slides, but I also wanted to mention consortium projects. So general program grants can be submitted either from an individual employer or as a consortium. So it can be a group of employers with some common training needs that are collaborating, and a consortium application for a general program grant can be led by one of those individual employers or by a labor organization, a workforce board, a community college, a chamber of commerce, or an industry association. There's more detailed qualifications in the guidelines, but this is an opportunity for organizations with a common need to collaborate. Consortium applications are, as you can imagine, more complicated. There's a little bit of a herding cats dynamic to getting information to and from all the partners, but it can be a really good opportunity. We find that it's most fruitful when there's already kind of an organic relationship among the businesses. They're not forming and meeting for the first time for this training effort, but they have an ongoing relationship and have worked together in some way, shape, or form. We've had everything from that being geographic, communities that are sharing a space or an office park, or it could be by way of union membership or some number of ties that bind, if you will. But there is a consortium opportunity as well. And then we'll go next slide. One example of a consortium grant is one that happened recently with the Mass Nurses Association. They applied along with 3 hospitals that are in a network in which their members are working. And they were specifically focusing on training nurses in a very specific type of operating room nursing. My understanding is that the shortages in these areas were significant, and the grant focused on this specific in-demand skill. And they put together a pretty elaborate, they put their members through a pretty elaborate pre-existing training program using the simulation lab at Northeastern University. That is a great consortium example, especially highlighting the pre-existing relationship. So there were 3 hospitals that are in a shared network working with the training arm of the union that they're very familiar with. Let's talk on the next slide, please, about topics. So what's covered under Workforce Training Fund grants? Well, the answer is basically anything within reason. So it's not bound in any way other than, as we mentioned, limits on mandated training. we're also looking for relevance, right? We're not going to do, massage therapy training for, an IT firm or something like that. But we're looking for you to identify what your training need is and help us understand why it's needed. What's your objective, and what are the business metrics that you're tracking to understand success there, and what's your training plan? What are the courses that you're proposing to address that objective? An application can include one topic, it can include several topics. We're looking for some kind of logic and reasoning that ties them together in a stated objective or set of objectives. There's a ton of examples on screen, including, of course, ESOL, productivity or quality, sales and customer service, lean manufacturing or elsewhere is huge. Software, and of course, supervision and leadership skills is always a very sought after topic. We hear a lot about companies that have, a member of their staff that is excellent at their job and is moving up, but doesn't have any supervision experience, and that's the next step for their career trajectory. So we'd like to get them some experience in supervisory and leadership skills training. It's open to whatever case you want to make, and you're encouraged to consider all your training needs, talk to all of those stakeholders that should be giving input. So that's leadership of your organization, that's the frontline supervisors and managers, and that's the trainees themselves. You should be getting input through a needs assessment process. And then, as is always the case, you should be kind of broadening and collecting ideas and then narrowing to a set of strategies that's a little more focused as well. Let's see. Why don't we go to the next slide? As I mentioned, there are a few training areas that we can't do, mandated training, training that's underway already or ongoing. So if you've already committed to some track of training, we're not looking for creative writing exercises to help subsidize your ongoing commitment. Anything that we would consider an ongoing cost of doing business, something that is necessary for current operations to continue, as opposed to above and beyond or some gain capacity or capability. Next slide. So I want to take a moment to share an example of an ESOL grant through the Workforce Training Fund. Piantadosi Bread Company was awarded $250,000 to focus on three things: leadership development, lean manufacturing, and workplace ESOL. They're a fourth generation family-owned business based in Malden, previously in Boston, that employs about 200 people. And unbelievably, they produce about 500,000 units of bread each day for restaurants and retail outlets, supermarket chains, you name it. So their application identified several challenges, including a communication challenge that ESOL sought to address. And as a result, they were able to promote and retain employees into positions, retain and promote into positions with more responsibility, the ESOL participants specifically. They also talked about some antiquated leadership styles and the need to break down some silos in this, fourth generation family business. And of course, seeing some opportunities to gain some efficiencies by helping to train their a broad set of their workforce in lean processes. So that was a really successful program, and I congratulate Piantadosi on their dedication to workplace ESOL. Next slide, please. So a few things to keep in mind as we wrap up, and in terms of like how to get started, what next. So first of all, any company that applies for a grant, they're going to need a certificate of good standing from the Department of Revenue. And that's usually a fast and easy reply, but occasionally there can be a complication that can take some time. So it's always a recommended starting point is to get the certificate of good standing from the Department of Revenue. There's also, of course, the training needs assessment, right? Talking to employees and managers and customers and uncovering what you need to address. And then sourcing your training providers. It can be a challenging endeavor to understand a specific training need and to find the right partner to go through this journey with. I always recommend starting or considering working with the local community college. The corporate ed or community ed department can be very helpful. But there are a million other ways to source, everything from Google to looking through the Express directory. I think these are some solid steps to get started on if you're considering taking advantage of this resource. Next slide, please. Also want to share this information. First of all, visit our website, comcorp.org. At any time, you'll find information about the Workforce Training Fund and all of our programs. Also invite you to ping us at any time at wtfp@comcorp.org. We have resources available to support people through the application process. I encourage everybody that has questions or needs support to reach out, especially ESOL projects. We recommend that everybody developing an ESOL project reach out and make sure that they're getting all the support that they can get. We'll gladly connect you with Yasmin or one of our team members who can focus on navigating you through the process. I hope that was helpful. And that is my last slide. The next one just prompts for questions, but maybe we should leave it here so people can jot this down if they don't already have it.
Perfect. Thank you so much. It looks like we already have a question, so I will go ahead and open the queue for people if they want to unmute. It looks like Garrett has a question first.
I wanted to ask about the consortium approval process. I've already got an Express grant approved through the Workforce Training Grant Express program, and I want to. I'm thinking that the class I'm offering might work well on the consortium program. So if you can comment about that, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. So I assume since you're asking about a consortium grant, that there are other employers that you would be working with to provide some training to your employees and their employees?
Correct.
Great. Well, I recommend spending some time on our website and going through our guidelines, and there's a section to read about consortium applications. The broad and short of it is you're going to need to get those partners identified in advance, and a letter of commitment, and they'll need to get their certificates of good standing and that sort of thing. So start by forming the collaboration and assessing where those common needs are, if that is the case. and then I would say reach out to us on this with this contact information here when you get to the point that you think it does make sense to, commit to that project. And you're going to go through a general program application. You're going to source a provider who's going to work with you to complete a detailed budget. And there are like, the logistical breakdowns, how many hours of training, how many participants, what are the costs, that sort of thing. One of the employers or some eligible party will be the lead applicant and will be responsible for leading the group, and the lead applicant also holds the contractual obligation with Commonwealth Corporation. They're the ones that are kind of legally engaging in effect. Our grants are a service contract. We do a contract with you to train your employees, for the stated funds. So yeah, I'll mention that one of the challenges to consortium applications includes disclosing information, right? So we're going to be looking for business metrics from partners, which it's usually not too difficult to come up with a quantifiable business indicator or impact on some topic that's not so sensitive that they wouldn't want to share it with their partners, but sometimes that can be challenging. Also, the application calls for sharing information about the wages of the employees, not identifying any individuals, but sharing with the consortium lead, averages for different category groups within their company.
Wonderful, thank you.
So I mentioned that to say strong ties with different partners is a key element.
Sure, I can appreciate that. One quick follow-up question. Is the consortium program part of the regular express program or the main full program?
It's through the general program.
General program. Okay.
Express doesn't offer a consortium approach, but work with a training provider, because you can get a grant for sending an employee to a course that's express funded, as can the partners at the same time, and the provider could schedule together, so it would be kind of an informal consortium, if you will.
Very interesting. Thank you very much. I appreciate your comments. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Rob, it looks like you got another question in the chat, and it says, is the grant to cover employees' wages and the training cost?
The grant covers the training costs. The company is required to cover the wages. So that would be kind of the match. We're going to apply grant funds to the fees for the training vendors that you're hiring to come in and provide their expertise, or send your people off to them, whatever the logistics are. And you're going to pay for your people's time, and that will usually account for the dollar for dollar matching requirement. And we'll basically attribute a prorated cost of salary and fringe for each hour of training for each employee.
Great, thank you. And another question that came through on social media before we started was, do you have ESOL classes in the Express program?
We have a few, not as many as we'd like, but we encourage you to work with whatever ESOL providers you can identify that meet your needs in terms of qualification and chemistry and all that. And if they're not already in Express, they can submit. We can approve the course and add them in at any time. You would just want to do that before you submit your application if you're going to apply for that course.
Excellent, thank you. And it looks like Mary Ellen had a question.
Hi, Rob. Hi, Franklin. Hi, everyone. It's nice to see you guys.
Good to see you.
It's been a while. So I actually have a question to both of you. Franklin, we've done a lot of ESOL training, a lot of great partners, great companies. One area of resistance we perceive is that there are some employers that feel reticent because they fear employees will leave the more fluent they become. So I'm just wondering, if that's, been your experience, and what might be some of the arguments that could allay those fears.
That is a excuse me. That is a great question, Mary Ellen. I have to say that this is when I hear that, especially when we are in the introductory stage of working with an employer, and they bring that concern to me, I just automatically go to the joke that we see all the time in LinkedIn, that the training, the chief operating officer tells the CEO, says, but if we train them and then they leave, and the chief operating officer says, but what if we don't train them and they stay? See, like that. If that's the mentality of, oh my God, if I increase their skills, they are going to leave me, I probably don't want to work with this company to begin with. I want to work with companies that is the opposite. People, I work with at least 2 companies that has expressed literally, like, I do know that this may mean that if people can improve their English, at some point they are going to leave my organization, but I'm willing to do it still because of the return on investment I'm going to get while they are with me. And it's okay if there's no way to secure any employee that, oh yeah, you're going to be here with me in 5 years. But the idea is these people are going to be more productive, not when the training is over, but as soon as you start the training. That's one thing. And the company will benefit from that. And the other one is, it should be bigger than the training, right? You should be thinking about what are the career pathways, the promotion opportunities that you have for your people. Not just for ESOL, but for any kind of training under the WTFP. The idea is that your company is going to move from good to better. You are going to grow your company. And ideally, your people that are learning English will grow with you. So yeah, I've seen it, and normally I just don't go forward with this kind of mentality of, oh my God, if I train them, they will leave. I try to change it of, no, if you train them and you give them opportunity, they are going to stay with you because they see that you are investing on them.
Well, I agree. I actually, that is my counter argument to them, is that it's because of the investment, particularly in ESOL. I mean, it's different with, if you're learning lean, for example, that's a specific workforce skill. But if you're learning to expand your language, your English, you're better in your whole life, not just in your job. And so therefore, a lot of employees, their loyalty is elevated, right? Because they see that investment and the difference that it makes in their work and in their life. So thank you for that. I just wanted to make sure, that it wasn't a unique experience that I was having, that some employers, had that issue or concern. And then Franklin, go
Can
ahead.
I add a quick comment?
Oh, yeah.
One other thing I wanted to mention there in terms of an argument to that employer is you're also attracting workers through these programs, and I'd be willing to wager about the quality of workers that are seeking self-improvement, that an ESOL, a workplace ESOL offering is meaningful to them. It's probably high.
That's a great point, Rob, because it speaks not only to the current, the incumbent workers, but also pipeline, right? You become an employer of choice. So thank you for that. And Rob, let's stay with you for a second. I just wanted to wonder if you could talk a little bit more about the express training sort of experience for companies. Is it Training Pro, the database that you're using still? Is it easy for companies to go in and search? Is it easy for vendors to go in and post availability? So even just a little time on that.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. The companies that apply for grants will go on our website, and they'll go through a directory in a very straightforward, consumer-oriented interface, search functionality by provider, subject matter, any number of things. The training providers are still, at this moment, touching Training Pro for a moment as it's passing through when new courses are submitted. But throughout the summer, we're replacing that with a new system. So there'll be more to come on the training provider side of things. And if this is meaningful to anybody at any time, go on our website on the Workforce Training Fund pages and find on Express, there's a For Training Providers tab that is always a great source for the specific details. The grantees themselves are the applicants. It's a very straightforward and simple process.
Awesome. Thank you. One more question on the general program. Once a company submits their application, I think you said it was 90 days, but I can't recall. How often does the review team meet?
Yeah, so we approve a slate of grants each month. At times, an application will get an answer within 30 days, although it's usually a little more than 30 days. And we commit to reaching a decision within 60 days. Then it becomes official as it goes through a question and comment period for our board. And after a week, then the companies are notified. And then training can begin after they've had an orientation meeting with us and executed their contract. So it's typically something like 90 days for all that to take place. If a grant isn't approved, you know about it within 30 to 60 days, and then we can start that timeline over with the next submission.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you both.
Thank you both for joining us. Does anybody have anything else to add before I kind of wrap this up for us? I know we just hit 10 o'clock, so I want to be cautious of everybody's time.
Very quickly, one last comment is somebody asked about if the grant will pay for the employee's time in the training. And I want to mention that there is an exception for ESOL training, for English training, where a company, if it's cost prohibited to do the whole training, they can apply for a waiver that will allow, if the employees agree, will allow them to pay just 50 or 75% of the time of the employees spending the training. So, for example, if you are teaching the training from 2 to 4 p.m. And your shift is until 3, the first hour will be on the company time, the second hour will be on the employees on time. But again, that has to be voluntary, and the employee has to agree that they see the value. As Mary Ellen was saying, this is training that's going to benefit them as a worker, but it's also benefit them as a citizen in their life beyond the company. So I know that for some companies it will be prohibited to pay the whole 120, 140 hours of training. So there is a possibility to be more flexible about that.
Yeah, thanks, Franklin. Good catch. I emphasize that all the training is on company time, but ESOL is the one exception where up to half of it can be on the employee's time if they so choose. Good catch.
Thank you so much, guys. This was such an informative session, and I think everybody here learned so much. Obviously, we had so many questions, so it was really helpful to everybody to learn about these resources. Like I mentioned earlier, there's so many resources out there that we forget are even available to both businesses and employees. So I really appreciate you guys taking the time today. Your time and expertise was greatly appreciated. This webinar recording will be available on BBB's website. It's on our Vimeo and our YouTube found on bbb.org, which I just added into the chat. Franklin, if you want to throw your contact information into the chat for anybody or contact information best found for English for New Bostonians, that would be awesome for anybody that's looking to ask any last minute questions, or you can reach out to me and I can direct you to the correct person. And then also a huge thank you to our audience today for being here and their fantastic questions. We really appreciate it. Thank you for taking the time, and I hope everybody has a fantastic day.
Thank you so much, Danielle, for bringing us together.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.